I was born to a nation whose leaders, while talking endlessly about democracy and the inalienable rights of all men, harm, death, and destruction throughout the world. They have waged one war after another, not only for territorial resources, but also to gain possession of an illusory moral high ground to justify what they do. We know how the West was won. And we know that ever since the first European colonists stepped on to her shores, freedom in America has not been won by the ballot, as by the bullet. But what does it mean to gain freedom on the backs of yet another people whom we are enslaving? Were we not better than this then? Are we not better than this now? Recently, during this current war in Gaza, 4 Israeli hostages were rescued. Seeing these young people reunited with their families, I rejoiced. Later, my stomach turned as I saw some of the resulting carnage among the 274 indigenous women and children killed during that operation. The hostages were held in one house, yet many homes were incinerated by Israeli forces using American rockets and artillery. The early American colonists cynically broke treaty obligations with the Native Americans by building settlements across their lands. Native Americans attacked those settlements. In turn, the colonists invaded their lands like a horde of the undead, killing tens of thousands of indigenous men, women, and children, claiming they were defending Christian civilization against savages. Today, Israelis continue this policy of genocide, claiming they are defending lands given to them by God. But this is just one justification given among many for war. And is it not war that ultimately sustains civilization? I fear that we have wandered far from our instinct. Only when this virus that is civilization replaces the life instinct of the individual with the will to power, can it replicate itself in the collective? Those who yield to its false dictates without question achieve the greatest success in society. Ones among them rule the ship of state. In times of great economic upswings, as by depressions, that tragic sense of meaninglessness that is symptomatic of this virus is magnified. Internal divisions increase. In this situation, unity of purpose is found only in war. Those human beings whose instincts remain strong and therefore have the strongest resistance to this virus, they are dehumanized by those most devoid of humanity. and they are killed in mass. Now, many among the Palestinian people, made into refugees, yet again ask, when bidna inro, where can we go? No doubt, Native Americans asked that very question as they were marched at gunpoint on the Trail of Tears nearly 200 years ago. Sargon I, ruler of the first known empire, led a campaign of terror and genocide from Samaria to the Mediterranean Sea 4,000 years ago. He began civilization as we know it, a process whereby that which is human becomes alien even unto itself. For this reason, and others, historians call him one of the greatest men to have ever lived, Sargon the Great, calling himself the Lord of eternal domination. He is said to have foreshadowed the coming of the prophet Moses 100 years later. And I say, perhaps another man in our time who has been given immunity for his crimes by the state so that he may have the right to rule with an iron fist again. The newly elected American president will tell us all that Israelis unjustly accused of genocide by the International Criminal Court were the only victims in this war. Why not then send troops to attack that court in The Hague? Meanwhile, as American troops clear out of the Mediterranean, will there not be even greater opportunities to sell arms to the Saudis as they too look to exterminate the Houthis in Yemen, not least of all for their having stood in solidarity with the oppressed in Gaza? While civilization may bring great benefits, what it is not and has never been is civilized. Most imagine that they are heading to some great end on that ship they call civilization. But their histories, written by those who win the wars, who do the most to pollute the earth, are going nowhere, not even to a habitable moon or Mars. Yet, some of us are not fooled. We know that we are better than this. And we know not to confuse the pronouncements of the United Nations for human rights for action. Therefore, I call for a scaling down of the great utopian visions that in the end only feed the fires of war. I say, let us stand in solidarity with the oppressed. This begins where we live, in our own cities and neighborhoods. For this reason, I call upon us all to dare to be human. When I am world leader, I will abolish the United Nations and the nation state. That is where I will begin.